Good morning, delegates. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you at your conference. I'd like to thank Lee Brown and her colleagues for organising the opportunity for me to do this. I've prepared this presentation on a number of assumptions. The first one is that I'm not here to convince you of the importance of enterprise in education. I'm here to talk about a way that we may teach or develop enterprise within the education system, an enterprising pedagogy, as I would call it. The second assumption is that, like most educators around the world, enterprise introduction into the education can be seen as an extra burden placed upon them. It's just something else that needs to be done. It's a little bit like what I might call being nibbled to death by ducks. Everyone wants their little bit. You may have to add sustainability, diversity next year, this year, the paperwork may increase, and so on. But I also appreciate that your core business is the delivery of qualifications. So any introduction of an enterprising pedagogy must be a practical one, it must be no nonsense, and it must avoid increasing the burden. Just a word or two from where I come from, besides Tasmania and over. I possess, or rather I see enterprise in education in a broad way, in the broad definition, as I call it, which is about being enterprising in all things you do, not just business, but in all facets of our lives. And that includes work, getting a job, keeping a job, advancing in a job, running clubs, running schools, running good classrooms, and using enterprise to look after yourself and those who you care for. At the centre of that idea of being enterprising is a number of attributes, and just to name a few, it's initiative, resourcefulness, industry, problem solving, planning, organising, teamwork, and so on. These attributes or skills are at the centre, and therefore I think we need to concentrate on those when we are trying to enhance enterprise within the individual and an enterprising culture and a powerful nation. Many years ago, I took my son to a collector's exhibition, right, where people go and they exhibit various things that they collect, such as bottle tops, bottles, comics, toys, and a whole range of things. And while I was there, I saw a young man who was exhibiting those little die-cast toy cars. Right? He's talking to the chap beside him, an older exhibitor, about his acquisition of a small baker's van, I think it was, a die-cast baker's van. He was very excited about this. It seemed to be a prize in his collection. And the story was full of investigation, even intrigue, research, problem solving, a lot of planning, a lot of negotiation, and to a degree, or more than a degree, a high level of risk dealing with someone overseas. And he was explaining this to the other chap in a very cogent, compelling way, a confident way. Later on, I saw the same chap, the young fella, at morning tea, and where people were lining up at the counter and so on to get their refreshments, he stood back, he let others not push in front of him, but go in front of him. He was seemed a little bit reluctant, nervous to assert himself within that crowded situation. Now, what had happened here, or what I surmised had happened, was that those enterprising skills which that young boy was exhibiting had escaped him. They were stuck in that situation. And I think this is at the heart of teaching or developing enterprise. The enterprise in our lives, we all have it, we all exhibit it to a degree, but often it is stuck in situations where we feel more confident and more practiced. That it's called situationally specific. Right? It's locked in. particular situations. Now, how do we transfer those skills, being enterprise that is, beyond a particular situation? Now, I think like most skills, it needs to be practiced. It needs to be practiced constantly. And because they're generic skills, which need to be employed in a number of different situations, they need to be practiced, obviously, in a whole range of situations as much as possible, a range of contexts. Now, how can we do this? How can we get this constant practice in a variety of situations, contexts? I thought hard and long about this, and then one day I thought, well, what do students do the most? Learn, apparently, hopefully. Where do they learn? They learn across a range of subjects, which is a range of contexts. So I thought there must be something in this. Here we've got the opportunity to practice constantly. We've got the opportunity to practice in a variety of diverse contexts. This diagram may help to illustrate the basics of an enterprising pedagogy. I believe that in any learning situation there are two basic components happening. On one hand, you have got the what the students are learning. That could be science, engineering, healthcare, construction, IT, languages, the curriculum, the standards. On the other side we have the how. How is this being delivered? If students are using greater degree of initiative, resourcefulness, planning, organising, problem solving and teamwork, I believe that they are learning in a more enterprising way. It's a more enterprising pedagogy. Now, the question, so my definition of an enterprising pedagogy could be put this way. That an enterprising pedagogy is where students, to greater degrees, use initiative, teamwork, planning, organising, and other enterprising skills in the very way they learn for a good part of their day. Now, there are some areas of education where they have more opportunity to learn in an enterprising way. Now, I think there are 4 areas that I've selected, I think, which are worth sharing. These areas I might call properties. They are great traditions of education, in fact. Sometimes I call them the progressive traditions. Those areas are ownership, which involves student-managed learning, which is about student responsibility, self-directed learning, all those areas. We know those areas. The second area is what I call learning firsthand, and that may be experiential, active learning and other titles that are encapsulated in that. The third area is reflective. It's about reflective learning, it's about thinking hard, it's about thinking what has happened. The fourth area is cooperative learning, learning with and from each other. I believe that if students are involved in those areas, we have a mix of those areas, students are able to practice their enterprising skills more often and perhaps in a better way. I believe that teaching in an enterprising manner is a value-added pedagogy which can produce 2 very important outcomes at the same time. One is the standard curriculum outcomes, whether that be IT, engineering standards. I believe these are better because students are engaged in self-directed learning. They have more responsibility, they're more motivated. I believe they're doing more authentic things, they're engaged more. So I think you can put an argument forward that you get better standard curriculum outcomes. But because they're doing it in an enterprising manner, they are practicing all the time across a range of contexts, I believe that enterprise is almost developed by default, as a byproduct, so to speak. I think if we take this line and we see enterprise in education as a how and less of a what, we can almost achieve a 2-for-1 outcome. Now I'd like to look at the 4 properties of a more enterprising approach: student ownership, experiential, cooperative learning, reflective learning, one by one, as quickly as possible. We'll start with ownership, which I call responsibility, learning in a responsible manner.